Right, it is 9 o'clock. But we can get started with our
Absolutely.
administrative things. So call this meeting to order, the marketing task force of March the 10th. Roll call, Deborah.
And certainly Walker,
Here.
Bentley,
Here.
Bollinger. Here. Dowling is not here yet, but maybe in later. Color,
Here.
Register. Here. Shab. Here. Nagai. Here. Punjabi. Here. Okay.
Okay, and you have the minutes from our February 11th meeting in your packet. And are there any comments, revisions, additions?
No.
Seeing none, they're approved as submitted. Thank you, Deborah. Residents forum.
Okay, currently there are no resident forum speakers in person. And check online. Oh, Kevin's here. Let me move him over. So. And to talk. Okay, Kevin, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great. We can hear you. We've got you in our roll call. We just started the meeting.
Good morning, Kevin.
Hello.
Okay, so just a brief chair report. We have a packed agenda today. We'll get through as much as we can. But I want to thank all the working groups for all the work that you did this past month, as well as throughout the task force. You know, really, the contributions that you guys make are moving us forward. And I see deliverables coming together. It may take a little bit, but we're going to get there. So we'll start off. Kevin has some commitments this morning, so we're starting with the ambassador program. And maybe I'll just do a little intro while you settle. So Kevin and board member Maxine Topper, Ann and I met to discuss possible ambassador program. There are some constraints on an ambassador program. The legal counsel has said we cannot have simply volunteers working for the outcomes. So a volunteer program needs to be either a committee, the board, or it needs to be a club. That way we can get around and volunteer issues. So, and you want to delve a little deeper, and I don't want to draw any conclusions yet.
The bottom line on this is that there's challenges no matter which one we were decided to try to do. And what the group talked about is the fact that this really has to be resident run. And so if you did it as a committee, everything has to be front facing with public meetings. And the challenges that you have with the liability if it's coming directly from the GRF. The second option being the club, you put the impetus entirely on the residents to organize this and run this. And anyone who has worked with a club knows the challenges of trying to find leaders to begin with clubs. And we also talked about the fact that depending on what your interests could be. So for example, if you are a golfer and you turn out to be the only golfer who's part of the ambassador program, everyone who comes in as a golfer would be requesting you. And suddenly it's almost like a full-time job. And so how do you balance, folks wanting to have a normal life in here with the constraints that might come as part of an ambassador program? And so Kevin then brought up the idea of, could maybe you do something on a smaller scale? Do you have to do something that's really kind of this bigger, more elaborate program? And so he and Maxine are now looking at the possibility of trying to come up with and draft a plan for something that might be a smaller scale ambassador program, which they'll bring back to the April meeting. So that's kind of where things stood. At the moment, we just don't see this as really being a feasible option, but hopefully Kevin and Maxine can pull something together that might look as if it's more of a doable
I don't
solution.
understand why small would be more doable.
Kevin really wanted to explore the options.
Just something.
Yeah, it's kind of what we were talking about, maybe like a pilot program. So we really kind of, the group, Dwight was really the thought that this is just too labor intensive to try to put something like this together. But Kevin really felt like now we could strike the irons hot. If we're going to do something, it has to be now. So where we left it was if Kevin and Maxine could kind of come up with an idea that could be tried, then, the group would look at it and evaluate it at the April meeting, rather than just saying it's dead in the water.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that, one of the things we said in marketing, we want to control messaging. And one of the problems with a volunteer group is it's a volunteer group or a club who may have some staff support, may not have much. Who's going to guide the messaging for that group? And so long-term sustainability is an issue that could be a problem. So Linda, just one more thing and then I'll come back to you. So one of the things that, and by the way, I was a full supporter of the club idea at the beginning of our meeting, but by the end of walking through the complexities, I was like, you know what, a deliverable that we can come up with as a task force right now is making sure that our website is robust with virtual tours, with advocates, and the other word.
Accountability,
What's that?
frequently asked questions.
Yes, yeah, to make sure that visitors to the marketing site can get a feel for what's more, can see the amenities. And so that's one of the things that we discussed. Linda?
Oh, I just wanted to say, I'm glad it didn't die completely, because last week we had someone come in and ask for a day pass. And wanted someone to sponsor them to go do something that was a class or an activity. And so they brought it back to me and they said, please ask the task force to think about the fact that people cannot get into Rossmore. They can't try it. They can't get in the gate. And the agents are really working hard to try to get them in and show them things, but experiencing it has a lot to do with purchasing for a lot of people. So if there was a way, I know I've had 2 people go through the golf program, and both of those people bought after experiencing, a day of golf with one of the golfers.
But they have access through visitors. That's how I got it.
They do have access, but prior to sort of the lockdown at the gate, they could come in and they could golf. They could on their own. They could also make a reservation at the restaurant and get in. Now they can't get in at all. So all access is being put on realtors, and they would like to see a program. I know people feel like they're trying to manage and control the messaging and everything, but we're not. We just can't get anybody in here to have the experience to want to come anymore. It's so very difficult.
One thing that I do, my department is responsible for the info@Rossmore email that's attached to the website. And sometimes we will get prospective residents will email and say, I'm a avid ceramics arts and I have a real interest in this, and can I find out more? And what I'll do is I'll connect them directly to the club. And then the club will sometimes make arrangements to bring them in. If there's a sort of a specific interest, I do try to already direct them in that way for that exact reason. The problem becomes, again, we make this a formal program. It is not something staff can do. It literally could take me all day trying to facilitate who is connected with who, which is again, how we came back to, well, then it really kind of needs to be resident driven. And again, the problem that you have anytime you have something that is resident driven is, can you find the right people to organize and run that? Can you find enough volunteers to support it so you keep it going? We had talked about the fact Activities Council is a service-based club that helps other clubs in here. Really well-run program. But in talking with their president, she has talked about, there's limits to even what they can do. And, the constant needing to recruit to have board members, it's difficult. You have to have, really, if you want this to work, you have to have the right person running that program. And the hope is that Kevin can figure out and Maxine can figure out how you can put something together that, again, is going to have that longevity so that it isn't just, again, you're striking when the iron's hot, everybody's really interested, but how do you get that interest to last a year, 2 years, 10 years exactly? It's an issue of sustainability.
And do you feel that some type of process like this could be incorporated into the website somehow with, here's what you need to know, here's a video, here's the people to contact, here's FAQ. I mean, if we had a robust marketing website, do you feel, because you're the woman on all this, that maybe an ambassador program wouldn't be needed because of the robustness of the marketing website.
I think that you're always going to have a large number of people who want that hands-on personal experience. And you're not going to get that with the website.
Yeah.
I think the website can do a much better job of answering a lot of questions and really showcasing what Rossmore is all about. So I do see that that is that really good, stronger entry point. But at the end of the day, again, it's the current demographics, and that could change in the next 15 years. But the current demographics, a lot of folks still want to see it. They still want to be able to come in and experience it.
There are also stages to it, and what we want to do with the marketing website is expose it to the general public, the children of potential customers, et cetera. And then if they want a realtor to get a tour, what a great introduction to get to the realtors.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Maxine, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in one of the discussions on the Maxine he's talking about,
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know. One of the things we were talking about is possibly really connecting with the organizations and kind of being able to refer more and let them understand what's going on.
You mean the club,
Clubs, different club, interest clubs. The other thing we talked about was having open house days for the community. Whether or not that would work, because you gotta make sure that all of those people who might be interested possibly in the future are available on that particular.
scheduling.
Yeah, but, you know, to just have a few clubs there, almost like an activity fair, but an activity fair for people on the outside. Or maybe we could have a virtual activity fair on Zoom. Never thought about that till this second, but that's another way we might be able to do it. So there's stuff to think about, but the complications of having somebody being able to schedule all that and be the volunteer coordinator became way bigger than we expected.
The open house is a daunting idea too, because again, we have to control gate access. So
Yeah.
someone has to be responsible for getting them through the gate. Who makes sure you have the facility, all of the tables are set up, everybody. So we do, for new residents, we do a newcomers fair. And I can tell you right now, it takes about 30 to 40 hours of work to put that together. So again, we do an open house for prospective residents. You're looking at it kind of probably the same sort of
Right
time.
with Zoom. What they have that to the.
Zoom might be a little bit more
So
manageable.
Kevin has a question. Kevin?
I want to thank Dwight and Ann for hosting Maxine and I for the initial talk. And Ann for your written report today. It was very accurate. When I started getting interested in Rossmore, I contacted the Democratic Club, and they gave me access to come to a meeting. So that was kind of one of my ways to experience Rossmore. So I think we would want, we also talked to Ann Matola. She gave us an indication of who the biggest clubs are. So we'd want to get a tour guide from some of the biggest clubs that people could come in and experience their meetings. Maxine and I are going to host a kind of a focus group for folks that we know at her house on Thursday, March 27th, and we'll send folks on the committee a invitation just to get a sense of, would people be interested in being tour guides? Or we also want tour guides to go out with as pairs. So somebody could, I don't want to lead a tour, but I would go with somebody on a tour. We're also going to need folks to be, I'm going to call them coordinators, who would, they would get, the info would come in, and somebody would schedule somebody who's interested in the Democratic Club or the gay and lesbian clubs or golf. So we would also have that. So we'd like to give it a try. We don't know if there's interest in people being tour guides. We don't know what the interest is in the general public for buyers to come in, but I think this marketing task force could be a good way to give it a try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least we're going to give it a try.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So more to come on this next month. Not as simple as we thought it was going to be. Anything else on ambassador program, Roy?
Let's say something, even though I'm in the company, but
And it's a question, right? A clarification question.
Just tell you something. I live in Mutual One. Mutual One has a orientation.
Right. Well, you're only allowed as a board member to ask a clarifying question. I'm sorry. Do you have a clarifying question?
No.
Can you pose your statement in a form of a question?
Perhaps we can consult the mutual one's welcome program every quarter. And the reason is that there's a gentleman over 94 years old. He did it all the things, but his memory was so great. Every telephone number he can remember. So we're all amazed.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up is mission, vision, values. Kathleen, you put something together that looks very intriguing.
So, what I did was just put our mission, vision, and the mission and vision, into a PowerPoint. And then, thank you for everybody sending me your ideas on values. And so we have a little process that we can start. I think in the essence of telling you might just do the voting today, and then I can take it back and do the stuff that would give us a little bit of extra. So, I'm sorry, could you
You're going really fast.
sorry, yeah. Where do you want to be? Go back to, I just want to read the vision and values. Oh, first off, yeah, just start at the beginning and I'll just make sure. Okay, so for everybody, we defined community as being inclusive. So we have all the resident members, which is the homeowners and the renters, Golden Rain and staff, and then all of the board, the mutuals, the clubs, as well as the external people who have a vested interest in the success of Rossmore and prospective buyers. So when we talk about mission, vision, and values, we're talking about everybody in the community.
That's a great way of recognizing target audience. That chart.
Yeah, actually, the work that the target audience did was useful in creating. Okay, so then the mission, just as a reminder, the mission is what we do. So we've already established the mission and the vision. We don't have to duplicate that in the values. To serve our active community in a welcoming and safe residential environment where abundant amenities, idyllic natural beauty, enriching activities, and low maintenance lifestyle provide peace of mind and the freedom to live fully. So we've already established that piece. And the vision, of course, is what we aspire to be and why. So it's our to inspire purpose, to be the leading active adult community in the Bay Area, offering residents a dynamic and inclusive lifestyle, surrounded by nature, where every day is an opportunity for adventure, friendship, and personal growth. Okay, next one. So what the values are the behaviors that we would like to encourage and promote within the community. So it's not just, what the staff does, or it's not just what the residents does. It's all of the interpersonal. And again, this is something that we hope to promote. It's not a top-down, you must do this kind of a thing. And it does not apply, of course, to anyone's personal values, although we would hope that whatever we select would not be in conflict with at least most of the people, like should be every 100%. But first, so any questions? We're going to go on to the selection process. Any questions on that or comments? Okay, so the value process is we're gonna have some possible values when we go through the process, then we'll put those up so you can look at them. Aggregating the similar values into categories. I did that. The sources were all of you, plus we looked at competitors. And also I asked AI to give us some suggestions. So the group that you're gonna see is a compilation. I included some people's actual language, because some people had some really cool language I wanted to include. What we're gonna do today then is first off, we'll have, if anybody wants to make comments on the list, we'll review it and then we're gonna vote. So does everybody have a pen? Who doesn't have a pen? Who votes?
You.
Just committee members.
You're giving.
Okay, let's see if anybody needs a pen. Does anybody need a pen? Okay, so we're going to vote today in just a minute. And then we'll refine the final language. I suggested to Dwight that in the essence of time, let's just vote today, all compile the ones so we don't bother voting on language that we didn't win or sitting in the line tallying or whatever. So, maybe then on either, you can vote by email and present on this one. We'll talk about how we're gonna do that.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll just vote today.
yes.
Okay, so I'm going to give you, please take 5 pieces of paper. As you can, all the people that are on the committee. And then what you're gonna do is pick your 5 favorites. You can write a comment or whatever on it if you want. Everybody see that? Apologize, but it was small, but there was 9 categories. So,
we voting on 5 of these,
yeah, vote on your 5
Beth,
best, whichever ones you think are, you would like to see most.
in the value state.
In the, well, it's not gonna be a statement, it'll just be values.
List.
We will, how can I say this? We're gonna have a nice little snappy name for each of these.
Okay.
So let's just assume for the purposes of discussion that it's the first 5.
Okay.
So we might have something like vote well-being, or, then the next one might say make friends, so.
Yeah.
We'll have something that will represent each of them, and depending on how they come out, 5, 6, 7, something like that will be, hopefully we'll have some cohesiveness, yes, thank you. that we
Kathleen,
won't
would you
go
like us to
over.
vote by number, or do you want us to write it?
Either one is fine.
Some writing might be a little different.
Yeah, oh, no, I mean, I put a topic on it. You don't have to vote unless there's something like a word that you really, really want to see. Can you see, okay, how it represents you?
And Kevin, if you want to email Kathleen.
Oh, yes, please, Kevin, I apologize. I didn't realize I could be here. And then I'm
I was gonna
gonna.
put it in, I was gonna put it in chat. We'll chat the same.
Oh, no, don't put it in chat. I want this to be, the reason why we're doing it like this is so that everybody gets their own voice in there without being influenced by other people. But we will obviously make the results public, but without anybody's name on it.
So I brought my secret ballot.
Hold on to it for a second. I have a mouse and I'll hop around it. That's fine, that's totally fine.
For the 6th one.
Oh, or it's not to the 6?
5.
No, 5. Okay, I'll come around.
Yeah.
Does anyone still need the screen up? Can I take the screen down?
This is the first time I've seen a paper ballot. in this area. I like it.
Very old school.
Maybe we should do this more often.
Very old school.
Oh, next person. I don't know what they're doing. They sound like they're having fun.
And summarize them, and then we can decide how we want to move forward.
Okay, great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kathleen. So next up is a marketing website. May recall at our last meeting, we said this was a high priority. Know that we had passed a motion at the last meeting to ask for $100,000 out of the capital budget in an effort to design this, and that has moved ahead. We approved it at the board meeting, so we have a green light, although a little yellow. So
Mike, Linda and I took a look at several marketing websites to get a feel for some of the things that are out there, just to get the discussion going for what it is this group thinks could work really well for our own marketing website. So we're gonna go through a couple of them. Laguna Woods Village just actually completed their marketing revamp of their website. what you see here, they open their page with an aerial view tour video that really dominates the homepage. The other thing that really jumped out at me is the fact that their contact us button is extremely prominent. It's that purple button up in the top right-hand corner. They also have a really dynamic pop-up menu box. A lot of our group has talked about how the menus can be very complicated, and Laguna Woods is about as straightforward as you get. But at the same time, it went with that sort of dynamic element by including the videos as part of their drop downs.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. They're very interesting because Laguna Woods is close to what we are. They are a Golden Rain Foundation. They're not the same, but they're very close. And I know Mike in particular has talked about, is there ways that we can really kind of convey how we operate so that people on the outside understand that. And so that's one of the things that they have done, is that they devoted an entire section to really explaining how they operate. This is one of their individual pages. Their sales page is incredibly prominent. That's one thing, again, Laguna Woods is a little bit more directly involved with their sales than we are. But I do think if we have a marketing website, we really do need to put some focus into that sales page. Yes.
So up there in the yellow, there is a resident login. So does that take you to a separate entity?
Yes, so Laguna Woods Village, and we're gonna talk in the next one about resident portals. Laguna Woods Village, like a lot of communities, they have a distinct resident portal website.
Standalone,
It's a
yeah.
standalone.
Okay.
So when you click on that, you are actually taken to a login page and only residents can get in.
Sure.
Again, as part of the next presentation, we'll talk a little bit about what I found most resident portals have. In terms of the sales page, one thing I do want to emphasize, if you looked at ours, you're going to see that our homes and real estate page has advertisers as part of that page. That accounts for almost $40,000 of our revenue. So if you do decide that you want to walk away from real estate advertising, understand that you are putting money back into the coupon because you will be taking some of the revenue out.
But we're dreaming at this point.
We're dreaming, yes, we're not fully forming our plan.
So they do not have that.
They do not, no. There are a couple though who do, as it turns out, they charge a lot more for their ads than we do. So something to evaluate, but for right now, I just wanted to be sure that that was kind of known up front. This is a page where they really outline exactly what goes on with their sales process and how their sales process works. The one thing I will say is there's a very big misunderstanding with prospective buyers who come to rossmore.com that we, GRF, has absolutely nothing to do with the sales process. So that might be something we want to consider making much more clear on the website.
Yes.
Ours is nowhere near as complex as this.
No.
No.
It's not.
Being that way.
What you're seeing here is what's called a tiled layout, which they use for their features and amenities. It gives you that visual element and a quick look, as well as a link that would get you to that much larger page. This is just one way that you could design a page. Next up, we have Sagewood. This community, one of the things I thought was interesting is that they have a pop-up with the most frequently asked for information and a very simple drop-down menu. So this is another way that you can do that. They are very big on emphasizing their visuals. So they use sort of a photo gallery approach. And when you click on any one of these, it brings it up full screen. So you really kind of get that in your face experience. Leisure Care, what was interesting about this one is they have what's called a fixed navigation bar, which means that as you scroll down the page, the navigation bar stays with you.
Yeah.
So at any point on the page, you're still able to use that top navigation bar. They're very much about visual appeal. They combine photos, there's animations, and these things called hover effects, where if you hover over something, it will pop up and be a little bit more dominant. As you can see, they are very much about color. They have the tiled approach as well, but they're much more text driven. So the photos are there, but there's a heavier emphasis on text than the one we just saw.
Yes.
They also, they have a common theme throughout. You see where on pretty much all of their pages. They're trying to tie everything together with sort of a cohesive design. This one is GenCare Lifestyle. They separate their website based on target audience. So you have two different paths. Did you ever see those choose your own adventure books?
Yeah.
So you're kind of doing that with website. Are you here for yourself or are you the adult child looking for your family member? And depending on which one you click, it's a different path into the website and different information that you get.
And are all of these active adult or are some of them assisted living or?
So you're seeing active and assisted living.
So a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of both. This isn't so much about let's duplicate their content as it's more about looking at different ways that we could design things. And that you will see later, we do have a few more active adult communities towards the end. Again, there's another different tiled feature for how they highlight their different properties. And they're very much about big and bold when they want to highlight their special features. So it's almost like you're looking at a marketing brochure from a digital perspective. What's happening at GenCare? So this is their personal touch with a blog. Each one of these are blog entries, but it's again how they're kind of putting that human touch on what their business is all about. This one I think is Atria. Yes, Atria uses a chat box, and this is all based on AI to give a sense of immediate attention. The one thing you have to be careful with is that I did decide to play around with the chat box and quickly discovered that you're getting your standard AI type answers. So if you ask too specific a question, it takes you back to that general answer, and that could be actually frustrating for some prospective residents. So one of the things to be careful with if we went that route. They use very dominant photos to convey their statement of values. So their statement of values are all over their website. And again, they're linking it with these big, bold images. At the same time, they really kind of balance that visual breakout with this list approach. So they're trying to get across a lot of information about what their amenities are. And so they decided to use a list approach with these little tiny graphics to do that. Panorama. Now this one, I'm going to see if I can get the video up because they have what I think is one of the most impressive videos I've seen.
I agree. It was really nicely done.
See if we can get it up.
So when you're under the share screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again. There we go. There's music to it too, but I think the audio is working.
It's you have to click it on the share screen area.
I think the problem is if I turn the audio on, I'm gonna get an overlap because of Zoom. But you're getting a sense, the way that they're kind of doing the fade in and fade out, the way you're seeing it from different perspectives. It's definitely a more dynamic video than we have. It has more of the marketing feel to it, where the video that we have for our website is much more about conveying information.
Almost looks like a 4-star hotel, the way they do it.
Yes. And interestingly enough, a lot of the marketing videos are now like this.
Yeah.
You see a lot of this sort of depth to it.
Very cool.
The drone ones, it's all about drones.
Yes. Get us back to slideshow. So again, that was just to give you one example of the kind of video treatment that you can have. This is still Panorama. They put a major emphasis on their visuals. And when you click any of these photos, it gives you again that full size pop-up so that you really kind of get drawn in it's very obvious that they put a lot of money into the visual ends, both the video and the photos. So again, that's one way that you can work your website. I thought this was interesting. Their gallery of photos is part of a moving carousel at the bottom of the page. So it's rotating in about a dozen different photos so that you're getting even more. And you kind of have that animation feel, the motion feel with the website. This one, they do what's called hero videos. So those are 1 minute or less, and it's really kind of a snapshot of whatever it is that they're trying to convey. So there are those quick hitting videos. There are a lot of folks who are kind of ingrained with the whole idea of TikTok and you know, Snapchat, all those kinds of things where they want quick. They don't necessarily want to sit through a long video. So that's what the hero videos give them. I also liked the snapshot of the little factoids that they have. Again, quick information makes it easy to digest for people who are coming to a website like this. Fox Run, they do a homepage carousel with the photos and message. So what you see, this is just one of 3 different homepage experiences that you can have. They're also very prominent with their contact info. And if you wanted to request a brochure, you don't have to hunt on the website to find those right there.
Is it floating on every page?
Yes, it is. I thought this was kind of interesting. They're very concise with their information on the homepage, and they have one of the most neutral color palettes. So it's very, very clean. It's a clean design look. Vertical stack design, this works because the text is concise. So you really have to be very, very short and brief with your text in order. A stack design means each element is on top of each other. So as you're scrolling, you're seeing them each in sort of this panoramic view. They do testimonials and videos also as part of a carousel. So you see one and then you click, you can see the next one, click, and again, very short 1 minute videos is what they're doing with this.
And when you were going through this, or maybe Mike, did you look at this on your phone?
I looked at it at both on 3 different experiences. So I looked on the laptop, I looked on a tablet, and I looked on the mobile phone.
All of your devices, yeah.
All devices.
That's a good idea.
No matter what we do with a marketing website, one of the things we will tell them is that it needs to be dynamic. So no matter what you're on, whether it be a phone or a tablet or a laptop or whatever, you're able to get the full experience.
Isn't that
That's
standard
important.
now, though?
It is fairly standard, but it is something you do need to, as you're putting the website together, it is something you do need to think about, especially when it comes to, again, these long blocks of text. On a mobile phone, you keep in mind, you really have to scroll to read.
Yes.
Where some of the shorter ones, everything is contained on one screen.
Or bifurcated, you know, a
Right,
lot of times.
right.
The thing that happens, I learned from my website, is that the algorithm will place the things in a different order than you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, I didn't want that to be there,
Yeah.
but it just, you know, I have a basic website on Squarespace, so it's not
Yeah,
a huge amount, but.
whatever we end up doing, we will do it as WordPress, and our WordPress allows us to work in either mobile or static. And so we can go into the mobile one and change things around. That is one thing that I'll insist on, no matter what we do for the marketing website, it does need to be WordPress based so that we can run it. And 2, I would want the ability to make changes independently with the 2 versions of it, just because it gives us a little more control. So this one's putting a lot more emphasis on text descriptions rather than visuals, but the navigation is probably the most prominent I've seen on a lot of the websites. This is an example where they're using these multiple virtual tours. I won't pull out and show you, but each one of these virtual tours shows you something different. So you could see the interior space of the different places you could live or the different amenities. Again, as a virtual tour, they're doing kind of that 360. So they're standing in one location and they're taking you all the way around it so that you really kind of get that full view as if you're standing in the room. This one went for big, bright color palettes and opting more for buttons instead of photos to keep the homepage from looking cluttered. I don't personally like this. I think it looks a little too amateur, yes, but it is an option, so I wanted to show you what it would look like. And then the same website, again, really strong on the colors. This is how they did their frequently asked question. One thing I do want to note about this particular website is they are not ADA. You never ever put a light color on a dark color the same. Somebody who's low vision is not going to be able to see that. So an ADA website it's actually a requirement in the state of California, but I even take it a step higher and I do, instead of doing the required, we do the recommended in here, just because we do have a lot of low vision residents. So it's important to have that. A lot of color, motion, and activity, especially on the homepage for the villages. This is down in San Jose. So again, they're emphasizing, what I thought was interesting about this one is it's a pretty special place, is something that you see throughout their website. So that's really sort of their motif that they're trying to carry through.
Tagline, kind of.
Like a tagline. And they are highlighting their lifestyle with sort of this digital brochure feel, which I think it's definitely an interesting approach. This is, Club Maganas, I think is the one. So what was interesting about this is they have a dual menu on their homepage. So you have that top menu and then you have a bottom menu. So there's two different entry points to get into the website, depending on what you're looking for. If you have a lot of information that you're trying to get them to see, that's one way you could do it, is with the dual menu. There again, homepage is really used to direct the traffic into the website. The homepage is really just a landing spot to say, what are you trying to find? You want dining, click here, and off you go deeper into the website for more information. They focus again on visuals, photos, and videos, but they're also using a lot of white space, which is kind of an interesting, I'm seeing this popping up more and more on a lot of websites, where they're looking less about trying to get you to draw you in with color and more about putting the emphasis on the visual and using white space in the rest of the areas. Video, it's really playing up active to fit with the lifestyle concept here. So this is Sun City, Lincoln Hills. When the video, everything is coming at you. The bike riders are coming at you, the walkers are coming at you. It's really kind of, again, it's interesting because like Panorama is trying to draw you in, where this one is almost trying to push you back a little. And I'll say it's effective because you do find yourself going, wow. And then this is also still Sun City, Lincoln Hills. They're retaining that standard footer at the bottom that has things like their quick links, their contact, their social buttons. So it was kind of interesting because it seemed as if more and more marketing videos were going away from this. So it was interesting to see somebody that still had that static footer element. And then when you pull in, we use flyouts on our website, but what I'm seeing more and more on the different marketings is that they're using what's called collapsible content. So when you click on the little plus button, it will pull out and give you more information. That allows your page to stay uncluttered, but still gives you the entry point to get to the information if you're interested in trying to find out more.
Specific information.
Specific information, correct. And so that's just sort of, again, a run through some of the things that are out there. There's a lot that can be done. And I think really it kind of comes back to the group of maybe looking through these as you have time and pulling out some of the ones that you think are really, that you think have the most impact. The reason that's going to be important, there are probably 5,000 to 10,000 different marketing website developers out there. So if we're going to narrow this down, it would help to have an idea from the task force of what elements you really like, And then what I'll do is go to the developers for those particular websites and get a little bit more of their portfolio information as well as costs, so that we can start to break down what that's gonna look like.
So specifically, what do you want from us?
Specifically, you can either, what I showed you here, what Mike, Linda and I already went through, or if you have other websites that you have an interest in, let's make this easy. The 3 elements you like the most. Pick the 3 design elements that you think,
Not the websites.
not the websites. I'm looking at design. Tell me what website you found it on, which of the websites, where it's located. But tell me the 3 design elements that really strike you. And then let's see first if there's some commonality. And if there's not commonality, then I'll start to go to different web designers to say, this is sort of our interest list. Show me your portfolio that matches this. What I'd like to do is narrow down to like 2 or 3 web developers where we could really look at their portfolios. And then the task force would be able to have some say in who we select as our web designer.
And so that we're on the same page, the marketing website is publicly facing and its
Correct.
its primary purpose is to present Rossmore to prospective.
Correct. The target audience is the prospective buyer and those adult children. Yeah.
So, excuse me for a second. So I might differ with your process.
Okay.
I'm joking. So April is coming fast. May is coming even faster. And getting everybody's input can be painful in the process. You guys have done an amazing job of identifying the universe of ideas. I'd love to see your working group come back with your recommendation.
Okay.
That then the task force can say yay or nay. Because, I mean, in looking at all of those options, I don't know what top 3 I would choose at this point in time. But you know, from a practicality standpoint, Linda and Mike, you were helping out on this, right? You know by what all your discussions.
The
So
one
we-
thing I'll say is if somebody though, in watching this, in the next, we'll say by Friday, if there was something that really popped out at you that you're really interested in, email me so that when the 3 of us sit down, that is part of our conversation.
It's a deadline.
Friday.
Is that all right with the rest of the task force?
Shoot me an email if you had something that really stood out to you. And then Mike, Linda and I will coordinate the time to sit down and talk.
You know, I looked at it, when I looked at all these different websites, it was almost overwhelming. But what I wanted was something that engaged me and made me interested in going further into it. Because as a prospective buyer, that's what we're looking for.
So may I just say something? I get phone calls a lot and I think it's from our webpage and they don't know what Rossmore is still. So I think I thought about it deeply last week as I answered questions of people just calling me, what is it? Can I rent it? You know, I think we probably should emphasize 2 things, lifestyle and that we're kind of in the real estate business. We're selling something and there's some housing involved here that's purchased. Because I really, I don't rent. I don't help people who rent, really. So the idea that we really talk about housing, it seems to me a real important aspect of that we need to keep in mind and active.
Yeah, we talked about, at the last one, maybe I'm making myself irritating and saying this over and over again, but the frequently asked questions, what the content is, I think you guys have done an awesome job in being able to define it. I think in terms of what your next step is to select who the people are and kind of get an idea of the cost. Those are the right questions. So I think we addressed the right questions. But then the next step is, what do you say?
Yep.
And what are the things you have to communicate? And Linda, you were just bringing up a really important point, which is that, you have everybody from, oh, I've lived here for my entire life in the Bay Area and I know exactly what Rossmore is. My cousin lives there or whatever, to people in Kansas who are going like, oh, I have to move to the Bay Area because my kid is here. What in the heck is this? And even just looking at the questions, that was not obvious, going like, well, is this assisted living? Is it independent living? Some of those things I'm like, I'm not ever seeing those bicycles in real life and that list. But, so I think that that also has to be onion track, which is defined, because you aren't gonna be able to get to the point where the people can actually work on it. Until you say, look, here's all the content.
Yeah.
And that was one, that was sort of separated out. We were talking about doing the frequently asked questions. And again, that was one reason Laguna Woods was at the start of this. That one wasn't just for design, but they are very similar to us in some ways. And like I said, I do think, getting back to what Mike was talking about, how do we really sort of define what Rossmore is and what Rossmore does? Laguna Woods has taken a pretty good track at trying to do that. And probably the most successful I've seen, because you'll see it's another part in our agenda. We've made attempts in the past to describe what we are and try to diagram it, and it is not easy to explain Rossmore.
And I think maybe kind of to build on what Dwight was saying, one option is, let's take Laguna Woods as a template and then say, what else did we see that we would like to incorporate or change in theirs, rather than be like white sheet of paper, you know, all of the options and stuff like that. If that one is the most close and we all think it looks pretty darn good, even taking what they say and just saying, let's just copy their content and then alter it where it makes sense for us. I think that's a fast path to getting to where we need to be, because that content is gonna take a long time.
Yes,
And it's gonna have controversy.
And it's the most important.
Yeah.
I totally
And-
agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree.
and that might have to be something that extends even beyond the marketing task force. I mean, we may have the structure and know, you know, essentially kind of what we're looking at as setup, but some of the finer pieces of what needs to be included with that content, there may still need to be, you know, 3 people assigned to do that over. And quite honestly, real marketing web design will take 6 months.
Yes.
It'll be a 6-month process where you'll get first draft back, you'll take a pass through, you'll make adjustments. Here comes the second, you'll make adjustments. So we may decide, maybe that's one of the recommendations that comes in May, that 2 or 3 people from this group continue on with that.
I think you can get an idea from your top 2 or 3 web designers, like, you really like these people.
Yeah.
Is to say, give us your process.
Exactly.
And then you can get an idea about like, do we need to have all that done before they even start?
Right.
Or, you know, that'll give you, I think, probably a better, more accurate time. Could be.
Let's go back to Kathleen's point on content and so look and design and gadgets, that's all wonderful, but we need to focus a little bit more on content at this point in time and make sure that we're targeting the right issues. So I like that idea of taking Laguna Woods and saying, how could we make it better from a content standpoint? Linda?
Yeah, I think our group can really look at the reverse engineering what they did and we use what looks like an org chart and put the components in, and then the team can look at it real quick and see if that looks like.
Have you been in contact with the web team at Laguna?
Yes.
Are they cooperative?
Yes. I don't want to sound like I will say up front, I've done my research. I don't want to say that we have to be locked into them, but I am very impressed with what they've done.
Yeah, going over the 14 websites that we had here, there's only 4 that I felt comfortable looking at. And it's the 4 that are similar to our type of lifestyle here. The other ones, I actually, and it's only my personal thing, I had a hard time, I thought they focused too much on afterlife. After you're physically able to do something, now we're gonna stick you in a bed and we're gonna take care of you the rest of your life here. You know, I mean, I really was turned off by the other 10. So I really think, to your point, we should see the best of the 4 that we have that are similar to us and forget about these other ones and see how we can take pieces of whatever that can make it our marketing piece. Because we're marketing a person for here, not for continued, what are they called, CCCRs?
CCX.
Yeah, that continuing care. And we have 10 of them there that are on continuing
I
care.
think the last three are the ones I said were more direct
Yeah.
competitors.
Last three
I
and the first
actually
one.
lose business to those places.
Okay, any other comments on? This is a monumental task, but it is the most important task of this group to come out, in my opinion, so. All right, so we'll look forward to a robust report next month. Or maybe even earlier, we'll talk about that later. But now,
You gotta give us some time to do the work.
you think you were wowed by all of those presentations. Wait till you see what Kathleen and Ted came up with on the
Ours is not nearly as colorful.
resident portal ideas. So I'll send those to Kathleen and Ted.
You can go ahead and do it. Yeah.
So what we did was, assuming our observation was the marketing website has to be appearing. We have to get a great one out there. But at the same time, we don't want to like all of a sudden kick the bucket, if you will, on that's probably not a great thing to say. You know, we don't want to just pull the plug, maybe, well, it's not a good one to say.
We want to get puns.
On the residents, because we have to keep that active for all of the residents going forward. So the first thing that we did was say, okay, what, just at a high level, what goes in the marketing website and what goes in the residents portal. So while there's a little bit of overlap, because people who are active buyers want to know more about what it's like to live here, in general, and this is really small, but you have I'll have a copy of it, and start to put down what are the questions that people have about their physical home, their financing. I can't repeat it myself here, but
Obtaining services.
obtaining services and community participation. So what are the kinds of questions? This is not meant to be inclusive, but just to say, we're answering different questions for different ones. We love the idea that you just take, a button, so that if you go to rossmore.com, press a button, you can go to the residence portal. Alternatively, there's a way to enter the residence portal separately. Okay, overall observations, we already talked about that. We looked at the residence portal. It's really, we think that it is probably due to technology limitations, because it looks like, and your team just said, hey, let's just work on the rossmore.com, which was a lot better for residents than the resident portal, which is very weak. So we are recommending a two-phase transition. And so we have some ideas for that. We don't have to go over it in a lot of detail, but basically most of the stuff that we found that was useful for the residents portal is on rossmore.com under one menu item which says for residents. So we're suggesting that we just take that for residents, if it's possible, on the GenRF platform, and just pop it over so that we have a hybrid at the beginning. So we're not trying to redo the residents portal, but we just take that off when we, at the point when you are gonna take the URL and start pointing it at the new website, you just simultaneously shut it down for a day or two, port it over so that it's just as it is. And then what we did was we went through the actual About Us, each tab, again, we won't go over this, you guys have it, and suggested what should stay on the marketing the marketing site, and then what should be forwarded over to the residents portal. And then we made some general ideas. One of the things that we think should happen is that Rossmore needs to start being web first, digital first. So right now, we're newspaper first, and we have an excellent newspaper. I read it every week. But it does require people to read it all and keep it, which most people don't, wrapped up in their green bin. And also then it has to be updated all the time. Like we found an example where there was a notification for a town hall that had already passed. And it looked like it was coming up. So And I think that's gonna be a task for you, and how do you balance your staff between the two communication as you start to migrate the newspaper to being a news oriented and the website to being the, full library source of information as a primary place where we want to keep sending people to go. So then the next few are going through, and we went through on the residents tab and made comments about what we thought should be on it, without going into a huge amount of detail. But each one, and then at the very end, we said, here's some things that we didn't see any place that we thought would be done. So again, this is just, it's more content oriented. We did like that Laguna was very, very much. And so again, they had a lot of FAQs. We loved the idea of social services, news, and calendars. We thought all of those things, social services being more the total look at all the different things you could get outside. And then the news could be really beefed up a lot. And we love the idea of having an overall calendar, multiple calendars. Anyway, Ted, we took over here.
Yeah, that's great. The only thing I had, really question for you, Ann, is, we need to get all of that personal stuff, what I call personal stuff, the things that should be on my Rossmore.com over there. I don't know if the banner can hold the tab, drop down and do that. But on that point, can you enlighten the group a little bit about our website? Are we gonna keep it? Can we do it with this one? Or do we have to look at something else completely, including how's it tying into Netflix?
Right. So here's the fun thing. We're now in month 18 of trying to figure out myrossmore.com. And we all knew exactly what you've already pointed out. There's some technology challenges here, right? So one of the things that I've spent a good portion of time doing is talking with different communities, including Laguna Woods, and taking a backside look at what their resident portals are. Now, I'll say up front, you're not going to see any slides for that because a lot of that is proprietary and they don't want you to see what's in. That's why it's behind the paywall for the login. But here's the fun part. Are you ready for this? We have the most robust resident portal I've seen, bar none. 90% of the resident portals are strictly tied to whatever your account management system is, so you can pay your monthly coupon, your maintenance fees, what have you. That is what their resident portals are. You don't have the ability to buy tickets or set up tea times or any of those other types of self-service features because no one has thought to really make that software yet. We've looked, we came close with one company that could do about 50% of it, and it would have cost us $45,000. And then in the end, we discovered it actually didn't connect with NetSuite. So we had to start all over again. One thing that we have found and we are exploring is a self-service portal that's based on a hospitality software. So hospitality software has things like room reservations and golf and dining. It has some of these pieces already built into it. And this one that we're looking at called Agilicis does it in modules. So you're purchasing the module. You would purchase a golf module and all the pieces that come part of that. So tea time, setting up for tournaments, being able to purchase merchandise online, being able to purchase gift cards, all part of that one module.
So you can buy modules independently.
Correct.
And
You're building your own,
pulling it into.
Right.
Okay.
you're building kind of your own portal.
And that module will work with our golf computer.
Correct. So what happens is right now we're using a software called Fora. We would port everything that's in Fora over to Agilicis golf module. And that module will then work to do everything Fora did, plus a whole lot more, because it is what they built is much more robust. Now, and the other interesting part is Agilicis is one of the companies that will work with NetSuite. The reason that's important, you want to be able to pay through whatever it is you select, so it has to connect with whatever your accounting software is. The second thing is NetSuite is also where our member records lives. So if you want all of your members to automatically be a part of your portal, which you do, because otherwise you're sitting there and manually adding them, it has to be compatible with NetSuite. That will knock out a lot of your third-party vendors. The reason is most third-party vendors that are community-based have their own accounting system, and they want you to stay within that native software. So that knocked out a lot of contenders, unfortunately. Agilysys, where we are right now, we know that it can do a lot of the pieces we're already looking at. The membership part, the golf part, we are now at the reservations piece. I have to tell you, we are a very complicated organization when it comes to reservations because of the number of reservations and the number of facilities that we have. So it is not an easy snap your fingers and make everything work. You have to work in sort of two worlds here where you have the historical dates that all of the clubs, like these are when our meetings always are, those always need to be booked every single year. And if you run into a problem where one of those dates doesn't work, most softwares will just kick back and say, sorry, it doesn't work. We need a software that kicks back and says, this date doesn't work. So you can individually sort of plug things in. We're hopeful that Agilysys can do that. We're at the stage where we're doing a demo script with them right now to find out. Will they survive? We don't know. But I'll tell you right now, if they don't, they are the last actual self-service portal we found that could work for us. So everybody who prays, now's the time to pray.
So, and just software stuff or working for companies, I never personally put it up. One of the recommendations is change the process to the software instead of change the software to the process.
Right.
Because chances are the process that the software people have is built on best practices from many, many companies that have done it. Now, what you're doing, I think, is brilliant, which is thinking about residents in a hospitality way. I
Right.
never really thought about that, but it's really makes a lot of sense.
We were trying to come at it from an HOA standpoint and it was just not working.
Yeah, no, I think
It's a services
I
standpoint.
think it's brilliant. And I guess my thought would be if 90% of it works and 10% of it doesn't, maybe there's a way to have a one-off for that one process.
So here's the other part to explain how our current portal works and why it is. Here's the irony, right? I went to all of these different places like Laguna Woods and like, can you show me what you have? And so they're showing me and I'm like, that's so rudimentary. I mean, they're still at the point where they're like, fill out this form and it will email our work order desk and then someone will call you. And I'm like, okay, we're kind of beyond that, but all right. So the interesting part was as I'm talking to them, they're like, well, could you show us what you have? I've now turned 5 of them onto our, and I'm like, I can't believe you're going for this because I think I agree with a lot of people. It's very rudimentary, except in the fact that it functions as what's called single sign-on. So what happens is you're going and you're putting in your username and your password. And when you come in, you can make a golf tee time. You can buy a ticket, you can book a class, you can book your excursions. We didn't turn on, but you would actually be able to do gate passes is already built into there and setting up your personal trainer and personal training classes. That functionality is there. We just haven't turned it on yet because it adds expense to everything, right? But the fact is you only log in once. It's a single sign-on experience. All of these other portals, when you go in, like Laguna Woods uses Fora, but when you go in and you click on Fora, it takes you to another screen where you can log in again. And that becomes the problem. That's why when you look at something like Agilysys, I'm not going to tell you how much it costs, but it's expensive because it's all integrated. All of these modules connect to each other so that everything works within the same space. So you will be able to maintain that single sign-on experience. We're taking that as far as we can, but it is quite possible at the end of the day, if we're gonna have to come back and say, if the reservation piece doesn't work, do we want to spend this much money to set this up and then run it every year When we know if you want to buy tickets or do excursions, you're gonna have to do a separate login. You've lost your single sign-on experience. Or do we now want to go to, all right, my Rossmore will have two phases to it, two parts to it. You will have your front facing, which can be where you can see what time does the pool open? Or information about Creekside Grill and how, click a button to make a reservation. That could be more your front facing. Part of that too, this is important. And one of the things I get asked a lot, can I have pets? Am I allowed barbecue grills? That's all in the CCNRs. We cannot put that into the residence portal. That has to live outside for the prospective residents. So like you guys have done, there's going to be some overlap between the two. And we just have to figure out where that overlap is and how we want to build that out. So you would have, if you would come to myrossmore.com, you would have a public front facing page that has some information on it. And then you're going to have the links. If we can't make something like Agilicis work, you're going to have click here for golf. Click here for reservations. Click here to buy tickets. Click here. And each one of those is a link that's going to take you to another page where you have to log in. We're well aware that that's not the experience we want to give our residents, but we may not have a choice. Now, there is one final possible option, and that would be to keep what we currently have, that single sign-on experience, and try to add additional features to it, but possibly bring in a web developer who could make it look better and make it function a little bit better. But that's going to cost you. And the one thing I always caution about customized websites, anybody here who golfs, who experienced about 2 months ago when Forup made one tiny change and took the whole system down.
Yes.
I'm not kidding you when I said it took us 2.5 weeks to figure out that it was one tiny piece of coding. The problem is it's 186 pages of coding. And if you ask for it, they're like, we don't know what we changed. That doesn't work with what you set up. And so our web developers like looking for a needle in a haystack before we finally were able to figure out what the code change was so we could change it back and make it work again. That's the problem with a customized website.
If you want to
You're
move away from.
you're trying to kind of build something out that you think could be great, but at the same time, when it breaks, you're in trouble.
My original comment. That is it. If you can get 90% of it standard, and then you can't do this one thing over here. At least what you're doing is limiting.
Yes.
Your risk and limiting the confusion.
Right.
Because the way that you're talking about with everything's custom, you're not even gonna get close to single sign-on, and every time you want to put a new service in, you're gonna be end up with the same thing.
Yes. Every time we put a new service in with myrossmore.com currently, because it's custom, there's about 25,000 that goes into building that out. And then the maintenance fee goes up because you have to maintain to make sure that that's constantly
If
working.
you do a cost benefit over a period of years,
Yes.
the initial is gonna be a cost.
Right.
But I'll bet the cost of ownership goes down significantly in the out years.
Yes.
Could
As
I
long
just
as it
say-
doesn't break.
But I can say that myrossmore.com is perhaps one of the best enhancements that we can do for our residents. When we talk about marketing to our residents as a target audience, that is myrossmore.com. And it's a monumental task, and I understand that, but I do agree with Kathleen that if the reservation system needs to be changed to accommodate the software, we make that change. But
We're working on it, yes.
we need myrossmore.com to be as robust or even better than marketing website, because we're marketing to our residents and they're gonna feel good about it. They're gonna know that we're moving into the 21st century rather than,
I promise you, we're working on it.
I know you are.
Very hard on it. I promise.
So what are our next steps?
So here's the other thing. Understanding that some things may not work exactly the way that we want them to. The other thing that we're now looking at, because Javier is my web manager and our backgrounds are very WordPress driven. WordPress is a platform that you can use to build websites. And one of the things that WordPress does really well is it works with what's called plugins.
Yeah.
And you can add these different plugins to get functionality. So one of the things that we're looking at is kind of what Ted's saying, can we take our current rossmore.com, take that whole template platform and move it over to become myrossmore.com? It would be scaled back in many ways because there's certain things we're not going to need on my Rossmore that currently exists on rossmore.com. But because it's WordPress based, first off, we have what's called a staging site, which means none of you see it. Only Javier and I see it, and our web developer. And we can start building that out. Now, we have not made decisions about myrossmore.com, but we know there's certain things that have to go, certain things that are going to have to be part of that. So we are actually already building that staging site. When we reach the point where the marketing website goes live, there will be a myrossmore.com that goes live as well. And the nice part is it happens at midnight while hopefully everybody's asleep. We go live with marketing, and on the other side, we go live with myrossmore. Everybody wakes up the next morning and they're living in two new universes. And myrossmore will be ready to go because we've built it out on a staging site. This is just one example of a community plugin that exists. It's called Fluent Community. And what it allows you to do is you connect the plugin to WordPress, and on a front-facing website, you're allowed to set up different community pages. They're like social feeds where you see posts and your folks are able to add things into it about, upcoming events, whatever. So if we were to use a plugin like this, we could set up individual pages for each mutual, for each department, for each club. Once the page is set up, we hand it over to whoever the board is for that mutual, or whoever the staff contact is for that department, whoever the club board is for the club. And we say, this is your page. You can do with it what you want. You want to make it private so it's members only? You can make it private. You want to leave it public so everyone can see it? You can leave it public. There are additional plugins that you can purchase that will allow you to do member dues for clubs, that would allow you to do rosters and calendar. So everybody can now have a big centralized calendar. So the thought is, if something like Agilicis does not work out, can we find the different plugins that will still allow us to have some robust functionality with a resident portal, which we would still put behind that general login, because that part doesn't go away. The membership login part is already built. That would never go away. And then what would it need to look like? So we take what you and Ted have done, and we take some of those pieces, and now we start to look and say, what's out there? What already exists that we can build this with the plugins?
Does the plugins, so I know that one of the things that you talked about that clubs in particular wanted was the ability, actually, I think what they're looking for is you do it for me.
Yes.
They're not looking for
Yes.
independence necessarily. They're looking, because to your point, it's hard to find leadership. Boy, you try to find people who are web savvy amongst our community. I think you're gonna have to wait about 10 or 20 years before you have a large number of people that are web savvy.
That's why, and I'll say up front, so this Fluent Community, we actually bought the license. It's a lifetime license and it cost us $200, so we bought it. Because at that price point, it's worth the gamble. Where they're headed, where their roadmap is headed, would be that you can create this individual web page. So you would be able to have a menu, a top bar menu, along with your posts and along with your own separate calendar. And it's all there. So, and it's all what I call front facing, meaning you're not in a complex program like WordPress. You're doing everything up front. So for example, you would click on a calendar and you could just load in dates and what's happening and what the times are, hit submit, and it's automatically on the calendar for you. Or again, you're the club president, you want to tell everybody, hey, we've had to change this meeting date. You go into your post, you type it, you hit submit, and boom, it's right there. So what's nice about using a plugin, yes, on the backside, Javier and I would have to set up the initial page. But once it's set up, we can turn it over to the club, and it's very, very easy and very simple for them to run.
I have a huge caveat, okay? I don't want to spray water on it, but as a member of the Activities Council, just trying to get that contact name and their phone number and their email on our current webpage, you will know it was 50% compliant. Because clubs, their leadership changes. So one person is very comfortable with computers and somebody else. So I think we would not have, maybe in 20 years, we'd have the compliance you're talking about. Right now, we do not.
And I'm not saying again in this world that every club is going to have a page. But what we have heard a lot is that there are a lot of small clubs who say, if you can give us something where we just have to post information or fill in blanks, they can handle that. What they can't handle is trying to run a full website. What they can't handle is the cost. Some of these, like Wild Apricot, it's a great site. It does a lot for you, but you're paying $100 a month.
Yes.
And most folks can afford
I
it.
can interrupt. We have 40 minutes left and a lot of topics to cover. And here's the question I'd like to see if we could tackle for next time. We talked about two monumental projects for your department. And that is the marketing website and myrossmore.com. What does the timing look like? What does the staffing look like? What recommendations should this group be making in order to help you accomplish what we're saying we need? And so I'm
All
not
right,
looking for an
so-
answer right now, but next month, maybe.
Okay,
Is that all right?
you're not gonna like the answer then. But yes.
So we're here to dream.
Okay.
We're not here to think about much, but that's certainly a part of it. All right, anything else at myrossmore.com? It's very. All right, next up is social media presence with Aya and Anjali, and they have a presentation they'd like to share.
Yes. One more monumental task for Ann and team. Okay, so what we're talking about here is social media presence, which is basically going to be your wraparound for the website. Your website is going to house information and it's interactive information, but social media presence across all of the platforms are mainly going to be an insight into what a day in the life at Rossmore is like. So that's going to include for your current residents, prospective residents, children of prospective residents, and your other community members, your service providers, and partnerships. So this is something that you would have to continue to maintain over time. So what I really want you guys to think about is who you're hoping to draw in with the social media presence, and if you're going to be able to continuously use it. And then what you decide to do should be able to hit both of those boxes. So right now, Rossmore's presence is fairly minimal. You do have a Facebook page that is really inactive. I think it was last used a couple years ago. The interaction and engagement here was below 100 likes per post, usually around 20, which actually is fairly comparable to your other competitor community organization. So that isn't bad. It's more a requirement of just keeping it maintained over time. And then you have your website that we've discussed at length that needs some maintenance for sure. And then you have your YouTube channel. So there are 3 of them. 2 of them, Rossmore Activities and the Mutual Operations Division, aren't really active at all. Rossmore TV seems to be a little bit more active, surprisingly has a lot of engagement, which you would want to take advantage of moving forward. One of your videos, Welcome to Rossmore, I think has about 10,000 likes on it, which is really significant. So that's something you want to think about as maintaining and taking advantage of moving forward. So.
Charlie, is there a reason why there's a black?
Oh,
You've
She's
got,
got her list here. Yeah,
So maybe is that.
yeah, there you
It's better?
Yeah.
thanks.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay,
Ah,
perfect. There you go. So right now, the way that you're using your social media is mostly news updates and sort of old events. There are some community event highlights, and then there's overall a bunch of operational information. So, like different resources that you can access at Rossmore. And the engagement level is low. Posts receive minimal interaction from residents or external audiences. Again, that's not necessarily bad. You just want to make sure that it's continuous rather than it, being maybe once a year or so. So low engagement is fine. It just needs to be So the gaps are one that you would definitely need more visually appealing and engaging content. So that needs to be updated. So that's like more high quality imagery, more up to date, succinct but engaging. And you definitely need to revamp your Facebook. Facebook is the one platform that is being widely used for active adult communities. So you definitely want to revamp that. And I'll talk about this more, but you can expand your presence to Instagram or TikTok, and I'll talk about what you're gaining doing that. Again, not a necessity at all, but something you can do. And then you want to have some more video content on your YouTube channels. So instead of it being just your old videos, you want those to be revamped as well, higher quality, a little bit more often. You can have some professionally created facility tours pinned to your YouTube channel that you can also use for your website. And a lot of these recommendations that I'm going to provide can work across multiple platforms. So none of them are going to be work on their own, and then that's it. You can keep reusing them again and again, and that's fine.
Jolly, when you heard the discussions earlier about the marketing website and myrossburg.com, did you feel that there was content there that could be duplicated in the social media?
Absolutely, and the way back, because there's
Right.
going to be an ecosystem. They're going to talk to each other. And I will say that all the content that you put out on your social media, even though it's like a day in the life of Rossmore, you want it to still be cohesive with everything else you're putting out on the website. So it should still match and align with the mission, vision, values, and if anything, your values are going to be reaffirmed through your social media.
Thank you.
So on Facebook, Rossmore Facebook, good to know, I didn't know we had a Facebook page. I've only been here 22 years, you know, so, some of the things, could the clubs like into, follow the Facebook page and also post information about the clubs that is going on, so we could, maybe it's an education thing that we need to do to get more presence on Facebook, to get the clubs to get involved and say, hey, post your event on here, do this, that shows activity and stuff with the Rossmore logo across the top of it, it'd be right there, and it'd be things happening around here.
You could,
Because I don't know that we even have attempted to market that at all. Have we?
Just do it.
Okay.
Fine.
Well, and touch on that because.
Yeah, so again, right now, the Rossmore News staff is responsible for the websites and what we're, the content, maintaining all of that. And what you're talking about is one website manager and me. That's it. Yeah, I have others on staff who help out. I have one who emails out the newspapers, part of the bulletins every week. I have another who helps updating the things for the club contacts, which is a pretty labor intensive one. We have where they dip in, but they all have full-time jobs that are dedicated to the newspaper side. So we have the Facebook page so that nobody else can have the name and the page, so that we own it. But what you have to keep in mind is social media is a living, breathing beast. The minute we open it up and let clubs start posting, we have to moderate that. Let me just give you an example. Nextdoor is not something that we have any control over, but it is the biggest nightmare of misinformation I have ever seen.
Yeah.
And I still remember when we did the flea market, was it the flea market or it was either the flea market or the winter sale. One of those 2 dates, I went on Nextdoor because I get copied on all the messages for Nextdoor, and it says, does everyone know you can go in Rossmore today and go to the flea market? And I'm like, no, you can't. This is not open to the public. So what happens is when you have social media and things are getting out there and you don't control the message, you have to be vigilant, super vigilant, to be watching that, to be sure the wrong message doesn't get sent out. So we don't turn on the ability for them to post to that Facebook page, because then we become responsible for babysitting it and making sure everything on there is accurate. So the only way you get social media is with at least one additional staff person.
But what Pranjali and I have outlined here is still the marketing side of social media presence, not the interaction side,
Yes.
right?
A little bit, and there are ways that you could work around these issues. So right now, your Facebook page is closed. And since it's the official page, you want it to be very controlled. You want it to stay aligned with your mission, vision, values, because prospective residents might be looking at it, prospective employees might be looking at it. So you want that to be a little bit controlled. You have the option of opening like a Facebook community page that is very clearly not an official Rossmore page, but people can be more active on it. That would require moderation. The alternative solution to this is that if each of the clubs have their own pages, what we can do is cross-post. So if they were to tag Rossmore on it, the Rossmore's official Facebook page, you could put that then on your page. So that way you get the benefit of content being created for you. You don't have to proactively create content. You don't need to moderate, and you could take advantage of someone else's content. So there is a way to work around those things. And I would actually highly recommend cross-posting even with your external community members. So like employees that might be tagging Rossmore, you want to put them on your page. Partnering organizations that you work with, you want to be putting them on your page if they tag Rossmore, and vice versa if you co-host events. So cross-posting is something you want to do as a very easy way to keep your community engagement high, and not have to create new posts every day.
Okay.
So the last gap that's identified is that there isn't a clear strategy in your social media presence right now for attracting prospective residents or employees. That's something to think about. Employees are actually a community group that isn't really being targeted by any of your online presence, social media, website, all of it. Most of it is targeted to prospective buyers, even on the real estate websites. So there is a good opportunity here for attracting employees.
We do.
LinkedIn is another one that I will talk about, but actually your LinkedIn is perfectly fine as it doesn't really need much revamping. So your competitive analysis, there are two ways in which we looked at it. One is you could kind of mimic what your other communities around NorCal are doing. So that's like what Laguna Woods is doing, what the Terraces are doing, Pines are doing. And then the other way you can look at it is what the top performing communities are doing. This also included continuing living facilities and assisted living facilities, and not just active adult communities. But the way that they're doing it is a lot more targeted, much more dedicated. And that is your aspiration point that you're looking to. So what I'll recommend is kind of going to be a blend of these two. So if you wanted to mimic what others in NorCal are doing, what you would do is focus on Facebook as much as possible. So you would post upcoming events on there, and it doesn't need to be high effort at all. It would just be the one picture that you're using for your newsletters anyways, and then just a link saying this upcoming event is happening at XYZ date and time. Here's where you can go to find out more information. And that's really all you need to do. So it would just be news, links to resources, general updates on the services that you're offering. If there are board meetings coming up that you want community members to join in on, committee meetings that you're asking for more engagement at, and then just sharing local news articles where Rossmore is highlighted. That approach requires the least amount of dedicated content curation, and you would just be using what you already have. You would maintain your low engagement, but as long as you're consistently posting, even if it's not the highest quality, that's fine. So even if you're below 100 likes per post, but you're doing it consistently, that's okay. And this is the most minimal effort approach. And if you were to expand to Insta or TikTok, you would require a lot more effort. And this is going to be focused mostly on your current and your potential prospective residents. It may attract children of residents, but over time, it's not going to stay relevant. And eventually you're going to see the wanting to move towards Instagram and TikTok.
Ranjali, I think Maxine has a clarification question.
Yeah, it's a question.
Thank
Sorry about the previous statement. Our policies state that we can't advertise outside of Rossmore. How do you manage that with putting something on Facebook that goes to the world?
I don't actually know the compliance.
You have to change the
requirements.
policy. The policy would have to change.
But there is some presence there already. So you do have videos on your YouTube and you do have some old posts on.
Yeah, it has more to do with events. We can't advertise events, so we would have to make an adjustment to the policy, but again, that would fall in line with whatever the overall strategy
Yeah, it
was.
would be confusing though. Issue that you were just talking about next door.
Yeah.
You put it on Facebook, there's an assumption made. That, oh, I can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an event I can go.
Okay, well, let's continue. Thank you.
That is something to think about though, that once you pull the trigger and start posting about events, people are going to start looking to that page for information. So you need to make sure that it's up to date and that you're clear about who is seeing it and if they can actually access what you're advertising. So that is something to really think about. So your top performing communities, what they do is they heavily use what I'm calling new media, which is Instagram and TikTok, for mass marketing. They're not doing it for current or prospective residents really as much, but they're doing it for mass marketing to get their name out, for people to recognize who they are, and to bring in employees and maybe prospective residents, but mostly children of residents. So what they're doing is they're using Instagram and TikTok. They're very often creating engaging short form videos, and they don't need to be heavily curated either, but they're more videos from events that are going on in their communities or new facilities. They're short form, but they're mostly an insight into the everyday resident and employee life. The video content is strong, so it's still good quality visuals, but not necessarily highly curated. So it should have the feel of someone is sitting right in front of you, experiencing it with you, but very, very short form. So like 30 seconds, less than a minute, not more than that. And this includes short form videos of facility tours, resident highlights, staff spotlights. But the less curated it seems, the better, because that showcases authenticity. So you're actually bringing people into what they think they would experience if they were here. And another way that you could do this without using Instagram and TikTok is blog posts instead. So this would be long form text that you could do on your webpage. This would be more for your current residents, but it's going to be for the same thing. It's going to be more mass marketing, and it's going to be more like an insight into the life of what it is like at Rossmore, but who you're targeting with that is going to be different. So that's going to be more current residents and prospective residents rather than like your mass marketing. But what it allows is for people on the outside to come in and see what life at Rossmore is like. The benefit of blog posts is that you can then have community engagement in the form of asking community members to post about maybe an event they hosted or something in their personal life or some excursion they were able to do. So you don't have to curate it yourself, and it still feels authentic. So this would be more a targeted approach, including prospective residents and hiring staff, but is much more high effort. So this is a snapshot of what an example gold standard community is doing in terms of social media. So this is Southminster in North Carolina. They are an assisted living facility, so their posts are going to look different to what you would post, but the way they're doing it is going to look very similar. So their Facebook is similar to your NorCal communities, where it's mostly for current residents, upcoming events, internal news and links to resources, general updates on your services, your board meetings and committee meetings, sharing local news highlights, and then local partnership highlights, allowing cross-posting and tagging the other business. So just to keep community engagement alive. But even their Facebook gets very minimal engagement. So even their Facebook is under 100 likes per post, but they do it consistently. And then they use Instagram and TikTok for mass marketing. So across Instagram and TikTok, they don't have any distinct or unique content. So if you decide to go the Instagram and TikTok route, you don't need to create content for each of those. You can use your TikTok content for Instagram, you can use Instagram for YouTube, YouTube for Instagram, so you can keep cross-posting. But what requires high effort is just keeping it alive.
Yeah.
So what they do with their TikTok is they have very heavy engagement on their TikTok. That's over 1 million subscribers, 1 million to 10 million views on some of their top viewed TikToks, but that's mostly resident life focused, some highlights on staff. They do about 1 to 2 fun posts weekly under a minute. targeting new audiences and hiring employees. And if you were to go to their TikTok and open their most viewed TikToks, you would see comments like, I'm 44, but can I move here yet? You know, that's the kind of engagement that they get with this mass marketing. And then another thing they do is that web page blog that I mentioned. So that's more long form written content with photos that you can then advertise on your Facebook. So you can cross post from your web page to your Facebook as well. That's long form content with very, very high quality photos. But the way they do it is they divide it into key segments. So in line with their values, they've created some sections for their blog posts that people can go into. So for example, you would see something like the Women of Southminster or like community building events, things like that, that are aligned with their values. And once you click into them, you'll see some resident highlights, you'll see long form posts about events and what that experience was like for them and pictures from the event. You'll see long form text about articles that other folks have written about that community and what the community's perspective was on that. Or you'll see long form posts about partnerships they recently did and how that partnership benefited their community and pictures from those partnership events or whatever it was. And then they use their YouTube mostly for residents. So that's longer form content. It can be from 5 to 10 minutes. This is where you would want to post your facility tours as well, if you end up doing that. You do have, like I mentioned, a video that had some high engagement, the Welcome to Rossmore video that had about 10,000 likes. But even that video kind of had the energy of like a 1990s infomercial sort of shot, and what you would want instead is something that's more up to date, but that signals to you that that is what your residents are looking for and what they would engage with. So that's kind of a good way to see what you want to invest in moving forward. And you can do sort of similar things on your YouTube as you've done on your Facebook and your Instagram, but it would just be longer form content. And then you would use your LinkedIn for hiring only. That's similar to what you're doing right now. What you could be doing different to what you do now is put in some employee highlights now and then for recognition, some partnership highlights, and then make sure that all of your job postings are current. That's not very different to what you do now, but it's the same where you just want to make sure that it's up to date and continuously being used. So overall, what Southminster is doing is they're using new media for mass awareness and hiring. They're using their old social media focused on current residents. They're using their blog post on their website for current residents, prospective, and children of residents, but in long form content. And they're using high quality images across the board. But the key is that all of these are very easy to navigate. Each of them have very clear use cases and target audiences. So there's no mess, but they are still using each of these in tandem with each other to make it seem like an ecosystem. So I would urge you to go and look at all of these pages they have just to get a sense of what your gold standard would look like. And this is an example of their highly watched TikTok, but it's so easy and simple. It's literally just a video of her dancing, captioned when you're at the retirement community bar and the performer invites you to dance. It's not playing right now, but I urge you to go to their TikTok and see how easy it is to make that content. It just does require dedicated time and efforts and staffing. So my recommendations, if you want to do a low effort approach, you would focus on your website, Facebook, and YouTube. Your Facebook would be used similar to how Laguna uses it or how you used to use it. And your YouTube channels would mostly be compiled into one main channel rather than 3, and it would be more organized. And your target audience is going to be current residents, some family members, and local community. You would try to post about 3 to 4 posts per week on Facebook, and maybe 1 to 2 YouTube videos per month, depending on how often you're upgrading your facilities. 3 to 4 posts per week on Facebook can be what you're already putting on your website, what you're already putting on My Rossmore, or what you're already putting in the newspaper, but it just needs to be at that frequent. And on Facebook, you would focus on resident events, facility updates, articles from community members and sharing just news and resources. Your website blog would be long form updates about Rossmore activities, resident interviews, and service changes, but mostly coming from the community and keeping engagement alive that way and not necessarily created by like a social media team or anything. And then you would have YouTube have some videos highlighting resident testimonials, some event recaps, and community improvements. Your Facebook would share website blog posts on it and your YouTube videos to create some sort of multi-platform engagement. And you would encourage residents to share Facebook posts from your page to increase organic reach. So instead of them texting each other or speaking in person, you would recommend that they forward Facebook posts to each other to get a little bit more organic engagement. And then you could use Facebook groups that are closed for resident-specific discussions instead of a Facebook page. So this may not require an external hire. It would just be mostly repurposing existing content with slightly better visuals. And it would just be a difference of more frequent utilization than what you already have. If you wanted to do a high effort approach, this would be similar to what Southminster does. Your target audience is also going to include employees and the broader online community, and you would be expanding to Instagram and TikTok as well. You would post about 3 to 4 posts a week on Facebook still. That wouldn't be very different, but on Instagram and TikTok, you would do at least 2 to 4 posts per week, including reels and stories. And those are going to be the same across Instagram and TikTok, and you could also post that on YouTube. So you could cross post, but it would require a little bit more effort. YouTube would be about 2 to 3 videos per month, and LinkedIn would be about 2 to 3 posts per month, mostly focusing on staff hiring, staff experiences, employee highlights, that sort of thing. And then your pages are going to interact with each other. So Instagram and TikTok should cross promote internally by repurposing short videos across both platforms. And say you posted something 4 or 5 months ago that you want to bump up again, you can use that for that week's post, and that's fine. Instagram and Facebook would talk to each other through stories, and those would be used to highlight daily life at Rossmore. And then your YouTube video should be embedded into your website, especially if there are facility tours. And then those can be shared across social platforms to maximum reach. For example, instead of posting the same video on Facebook as an original post, you would post the video from YouTube itself, so people are interacting with both the Facebook post and the YouTube video. This would require dedicated staff time or outsourcing to a social media manager, but it would yield highly significant engagement. So your implementation plan could look something like this. I won't go through this, but it could be a mix of your low and high level effort. This is sort of a recommendation that we came up with based on what we think would be feasible. It doesn't need to be either end, and it can change over time as long as once you decide to do something, you know that you will be. And it should be a strategic mix based on who you're trying to target. But that's pretty much it. And I think we have Aya to share some optimization for your data.
I'm conscious of the time, so I won't spend too much time. I just want to double click on the engagement tracking that Pranjali mentioned in her implementation plan. I think one key theme that we've been hearing about website and also social media is there's so much we can do. Like, how do we know which one to service, right? And I think a good news is that good news about having all these online presence is that it gives us data to make that decision. But maybe but that we get so much data from all these different platforms. How do we actually make sense of that data? And I just wanted to share like one example of how you can use that data. This is an example for prospective resident, and I'm using a user journey of how they would get to know about your media presence to the end goal of having them contact you to ask you about Rossmore. And this is very similar to what Kathleen mentioned about user journey. And if you look at data that you get from Facebook, YouTube, website, you can actually categorize the data that you get into different funnels in this user journey. There are some data that you can use to track awareness. Do people know about your website? Do people know about your social media account? There's some data that tells you about engagement. Maybe the problem is that people know about your media presence, but they just don't know, they're not interested in the content that you're providing. Or it could be that they're engaging with the content, but they don't know what to do after they engage with the content. They may be interested, but they may not know where to contact. Or it could be that they know where to contact, they know exactly where to ask or where to go to, but they don't know, maybe they're a bit lazy, or maybe they don't want to put in the effort to type out the email to ask about visit or open house or any events that they could come to. So I think organizing data in according to the funnel of your target audience could help you make sense of what the real issue is. And at the end, like what you could do with this data is you identify the key problem that you should be investing in. If this shows you that maybe the problem is the awareness, like you don't have enough awareness from the target audience, then you should be investing in SEO or paid ads, which is very different from like focusing more on creating the content of the website, which I also think is important. But so yeah, I just wanted to share this so you can think about how you can use data to prioritize where to start in terms of website and also social media. And you should have all these data from the accounts that you already have, and they should all be free. So, and I'm happy to help with organizing if you have data that you want to use to think about prioritizing for that too.
Well, I am Jolly. You have laid out a blueprint. Awesome. Law School of Business has just helped us move into the future. But as you know, we've got some high priorities that I think are awesome in terms of feeding into what you're talking about into the future. So thank you so much for putting that together. And don't lose that presentation.
Very nice.
Might be in phase 2, but.
Yeah, we have not shared, you have that presentation. I forwarded it to you.
It's in the packet, it's in the packet, everyone has access
Oh,
to it.
yeah, yes, it wasn't there before. Okay, yes, all right, thank you. Thank you so much, really appreciate it. All right, we have about 9 minutes left. And so, in looking at our 3 items, and which one do you think is the most important?
Geez, don't put me in the spot here.
I think the naming strategy might be a good one.
That's probably the fastest.
Okay, let's tackle that then.
Okay.
7B.
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 So, you're gonna take that in?
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, when you were on LinkedIn, and because on Indeed, we post jobs as Golden Rain Foundation. On LinkedIn, do we post jobs as Golden Rain Foundation or? I don't know.
Remember, you have a roster.
It's a
We have a Rossmore LinkedIn page, but on Indeed, they're still posted as Golden Rain Foundation.
So it's so perfect.
The naming strategy. Okay, so as everyone knows, we have registered to do business as Rossmore Walnut Creek, so we have the option now to utilize that. What we did, actually what Deborah did, was to put together this very elaborate spreadsheet that really looks at where right now we're using the Golden Rain Foundation name or Mutual Operations Division Department name. And so this gives you an idea of the scope of what we would be looking at in terms of if we wanted to do a hard, fast, wipe it all out and make it Rossmore Walnut Creek. These are all the areas that we would have to tackle in which we would need to do that. Or do you want to look at this and say, okay, let's identify the high target areas that we really want to go after and kind of prioritize order in terms of how you want to do that. Now, in some cases, there's already sort of things that we have started, like for example, the website. Everything says Rossmore Walnut Creek. We kind of moved that direction anyway a couple of years ago on our own. Some of the outside advertising, we had done the same. A lot of our stationery already says Rossmore Walnut Creek. Most of that already has that on there. So in some cases, we have dabbled in changing the name, But this is talking about, do we want that larger strategy? Meaning, we want to take this list and say, either identify the areas where we want to make that change, or to say blanket everything. Let's put together an actual active plan, a strategy for how we would make the changes for each one of these items. I'm a big, as a communications director, I'm a big fan of having a strategy of not just arbitrarily saying, we'll change it where you can change it, because then you're gonna get some people who do and some who do not. For example, if you decide all email signatures going forward need to say Rossmore Walnut Creek, then that has to be where we go to IT. We work with IT to make sure all of that happens across the board for everybody. So that's one thing to consider. The second thing to consider is how important to this group is it to make some of those bigger changes? So for example, rather than calling it the Golden Ring Foundation Board, do you want to call it the Rossmore Walnut Creek Board, the Rossmore Community Board? It's understanding where you want, identifying the areas where you think it's important to have the new brand name attached. And then we would look at the components of what exactly we would need to do in order to make that change. For example, if you're changing the Golden Rain Foundation Board, you have a lot of legal documents. Not a huge change. It's not like you have to go and have the bylaws all, but you do now need to say Golden Rain Foundation doing business as Rossmore Walnut Creek. So there's a lot of housekeeping for documentation that has to be changed. And then becomes the next bigger thing here. You have to really market this to the community. The community, the folks who live here, know the board as the Golden Rain Foundation Board.
And they all laugh about it.
They may laugh about it, but that's what they know it as. So if we decide overnight, we now want to make it the Rossmore Walnut Creek Board, a lot of people will be like, well, when did we get a new board? So actually,
Like this.
no, but again, that's what I'm saying. You need to have that strategy plan in place so that you're educating them so that they understand that change is coming. Same thing, if you don't like Mutual Operations Department, you want to change that name to Rossmore Walnut Creek Property Management Company. It's the same kind of thing. There's contracts and documents where you're kind of doing the whole doing business as part, but also again, making sure that there's an understanding. All the mutuals have to be educated, all the residents have to be educated, all the vendors have to be educated. That way, everybody's all working. 5 years from now, no one will look back and say, wait a minute, I thought that used to be Golden Rain Foundation Board. But you will have that initial pain stage where you are trying to work to get everybody on the same page. Again, it's all part of your branding and how you communicate that.
Change is painful.
So with that said,
Necessary.
Rossmore Walnut Creek as the external name is so important to our branding and consistency. Internally, we're Rossmore. Residents view us as Rossmore. So when it comes to the board, it could be Rossmore Community Board, Rossmore Property Management.
I didn't know that it was the brain board, I just thought it was the board.
Well, and to me, the important thing about saying Rossmore Community Board, it doesn't say mutual. It differentiates what that community board does versus what a mutual board does. So I just throw out my opinion is that we should put together a strategy to make these changes because I think it pays off in brand consistency.
When you said these changes, are we talking about these changes or are you talking about just the board change? Because I think
These
all the changes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I agree. I think that the default should be changing everything except if there's a good business reason not to. Then there might be certain selective things in there. I didn't look at the list in detail where it might be confusing because maybe there's more than one or something like that. Anyway, I'm not gonna say what those would be. And then as Dwight was saying, prioritize the external, sort of like walk through the resident's journey. First touch, second touch, third touch as they're buying. And then the last things that can be done, unless they're super easy, in which case just do it. The last things that can be done are the ones that the marketing people would, or the new residents would not see for a long time.
Any other thoughts?
I think we have two, it sounds like Anne's saying, we have two choices. Do we want to make the change and do we want to live through the change,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, but they're joined at the hip. Do you want to make the change and do you want to live through it? And so I think that's the real question.
Mhm. It'd be fun. I'm sorry, John, but you didn't speak during resident forum, it was your opportunity.
Could I get in 10 words?
No,
No,
but you can at the next meeting, or you can email us at grb@rossmore.com.
okay.
Other thoughts? Tanya?
I know we have a lot of next steps, and I know that the first meeting is only here for a few moments. I was wondering if there's any task force you want to make. I feel like there's a lot of next steps for communications team, and this is a good time to like take advantage of the task force that's happening right now. So just wanted to bring it up, so to see if anyone has thoughts on any working groups that could run on this meeting.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Do we need to decide today or now or soon about this?
Yes. We should be
Yes,
making a
soon.
recommendation soon. What I saw, the other question, and I know board members are gonna have this question too. The cost of changing email signatures and voicemail. Nothing. Most of the items on here are no cost items. Quite honestly, I scanned through, I couldn't find anything that would really incur cost other than the Tice Valley Boulevard sign. Doesn't say Walnut Creek on it. It only says Rossmore.
So you're associating cost as strictly a dollar figure. Keep in mind that everything that is done has a staff resource commitment that is in fact still a monetary commitment as well. Just,
Yes, and changing email signatures.
just as an example, so email signatures. We're all part of Outlook, but every single signature has been created individually. There is not a blanket way to go in and change so what then has to happen is you have to put together a spreadsheet so that you know every single person who's actively using an email. And then you're going to, because again, you're not gonna reach, you can send out a blanket email, kind of like you do with clubs. Hey, everyone needs to do this. And half of them will be like, I don't remember how my signature was created, and they'll ignore it. So then there has to be the follow through where IT is going back or my department's going back and saying, okay, have you changed your signature?
So
Here's the instructions for how to change your signature. So there's still, again, it's not a massive labor intensive,
let me
but it is,
stop it for a second, because we're past our time. And so here's what I would ask,
yes.
to come back next month with a strategy, if you will, but also some feedback from senior managers.
Okay.
On what was intended.
I think we all kind of feel that we want to move in that direction.
Well, I think a strong, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we
All those
feel
in
like we
favor of-
want to move in that direction. Yeah, I just wanted to know how other people think.
Thank you,
Okay.
yeah, because I assume you think like I do. Okay, with that, I'm thinking we may need an extra meeting between now and May. And so, let me get with Ann and Deborah to see when that might do. I'll do a dual goal.
You mean before the April meeting?
Yes,
It's like a mid-month.
yeah, because we have to have a deliverable for May, and that means really by April, we need to have something in draft form that we're all looking
Can
at.
we kick it down?
Again. Because I think you all saw today, and by the way, thank you to everybody for these outstanding presentations and the work that you've done, and Pam, thank you so much for all that you have going on. But the deliverables are starting to come into focus, and so we're not that far off, but we need some fine tuning before we put together a final package. All right, with that, any other comments? We're gonna defer the other two items. So next time, brand guide was another monumental task force that was tackled, but we don't have time to review it today. Anything else for the good of the group? Otherwise, we stand adjourned. Thank you so much.